if you view them as the myelinated sheath, the whole thing disappears. If you view them as separate cells that make up a system that channels water, then suddenly you can start healing your myelinating glial cells and your myelin sheath. For me, anatomy is the sacred geometry of the body, and it's shown in shapes, and it also converts into energies. And when you think of the myelin sheath, for me this gives a very dry image of just a sheath around each nerve fibre. It certainly isn't aqueous. But if we look at a cross section, the myelin sheath is made up of lots of cells. It's a myelinating glial cell. It's one cell that's wrapped around and around and around, and then it connects to the axon that comes through the middle. These spaces in between, that's cranial fluid. So and the cranial fluid flows down through these. For me, these create cranial fluid. How the cranial fluid is produced in the body is the blood is coming down a capillary. Then the capillary is surrounded by a cell. I totally forgotten the names of these. Endothelial cell, and that's the nucleus. And what this cell has, where it joins together here at the bottom, this is called a tight connection. Only pure water, it's so close, only pure water will get through there, nothing else. So water comes out through there, and then through the cell the water travels from the blood actually through the body of the cell and out the other side. And then the same thing happens with the oxygen and glucose and what the brain needs. And the cell is intelligent. It just allows out that and no more, and plenty of that. So plenty of oxygen, plenty of glucose, plenty of salt, and nothing else is given free passage. And the other place that has a tight connection is the myelinating glial cells. Here on the entry, that has tight connection, so only pure water can get through there and fill up this space. And so for anything else to come in, it has to go through the sides of the cell, and water will travel in through anywhere in the body. And for me, it accepts oxygen, glucose and salt when it's travelling down through the nerves to feed itself and to feed the axon in the middle, so that it preserves the integrity of the brain and central nervous system as it travels out through the nerves. It keeps the same environment of the brain to feed itself, and for a conductor of light, and for a conductor of energy. Here's a group of them travelling off down a nerve. Each one makes a little river. Here's one from the side. They're 100 times as long as they're wide, so they're really long cells, and that's the axon travelling down the middle. Just trying to find a picture. Here they are coming out from the spinal cord here, and as within the central nervous system they have separate because the cranial fluid is in this area, so that the axon can be fed, and they're separate, and this travels off. There's nothing to stop this water travelling off down the nerves. There's no membrane or anything there. It can just travel down the nerves. And then as soon as they're in the nerves, they butt up to each other in these joints. And then there's thousands of little tentacles that join these, and the water can travel down through these, through the little tentacles, and then into the next one. And in that way, they can make rivers that can carry the water down through the nerves. And not only will they become rivers for the water, they will filter their own water from the fluid around them in the nerves. So that for me is how it keeps its integrity. It keeps its integrity of water within the central nervous system, and then it has this system where it can stay as 99% water, glucose and oxygen as it travels off down through the nerves and out through the whole body. There's a myelinated glial cell with just the water. Can you notice there's a quality to that? And do you notice also it's very different when I'm talking about the myelinating glial cells and when I'm talking about just the fluid. The fluid in the brain doesn't have the intellect in it. It doesn't connect with the intellect. It does connect through to the higher cells, but for me it doesn't have the quality of the intellect. But as soon as you connect to the neurons and the glials and the myelinating glial cells that travel around, this makes up part of the intellect. And just by me talking about it, I see it when I listen to the lectures. As soon as I start talking about the myelinated glial cells, then you start becoming aware of your own intellect, because there's a quality and an energy to it. So if you look at that picture of a myelinating, it's only the fluid, and that has quite a transcendental quality to it, or it does for me. And then if you look at it with the cell as well, then it has a different quality, because it's got together, it connects to something else. And it is interesting for me because when I was painting these pictures, I was kind of channeling the information to show how the whole central nervous system works. And a lot of creative thoughts were coming through. And it would almost get too much, and I would just have to drop back and let the channel come through. And then half an hour later or an hour later, the bit of information I wanted would just pop out. And the myelinating glial cells, they're more like, for me, like a creative, almost connecting to spirit intelligence of the intellect. And the more the axon and the neuron is more the normal type intellect. It's the landlines. It travels through landlines, and the energy that travels through water is like cell phones. It's just transmitted. They don't know how it travels. They know that it's traveling, but they don't know how it's doing it. And it's like so. And this picture, as I was drawing it, painting it, was the interface between where you move out from thoughts and the intellect into just spirit and channeling. Somehow the cranial fluid within the myelinating glial cells was the interface between the creative intellect and just the pure channel with no thought in it. So it was quite interesting to me that I had some geometry that was a physical thing that related to my connection to channeling, thought, intellect, not intellect, higher self, and how it physically downloaded through the whole body. So for me, the myelinating glial cells play a very important part in our evolution and our spiritual growth. And if you view them as the myelinated sheath, the whole thing disappears. If you view them as separate cells that make up a system that channels water, then suddenly you can start healing your myelinating glial cells and your myelin sheath, and diseases like MS and the likes of Parkinson's disease and things like that. And you can start feeling the qualities of your intellect rather than being them, and the qualities of your mind rather than being your mind, being captured by it. You can view it, and you can view the mechanism, and you can have the anatomy of that mechanism. And with holographic breathing, you have a way of accessing that.